Thank you all for coming. It's lovely to see so many people here. And before we start talking to this panel, I just have to say that I know we're all males here, but that wasn't the intention originally. And I had asked Charlotte Bruce Christensen to come and join us, but because of inavailability, she wasn't able to come. So it's by default an all-male panel here. But next year, I'll have some women with us and make it absolutely clear that we all are cinematographers, male, females, Africans, Indians, people of all races. Last year, I did a film again, a panel again about the image, and we looked at how the image is not just what is in front of you, but it has a three-dimensionality. And so that with what you shoot, you're also referring to what isn't in front of the camera. And implication of the image is vital to everything we do. And today, we're looking at the eye, how we individually see the world. And where we come from might have an effect on that. You know, if you live in a country that's very sunny and very bright, it might affect the way you see the world. You live, you know, and that is true of Spain and many other places. And if you live in Denmark, you have a different view and a different way of telling stories. And each one of our countries do it in a different way. And that, to me, is fascinating. It's not purely the eye, it's also the art, the culture, the place you come from, and it's much more complex. And it's a combination of all these things that brings together the way we see the world. I was born in France, in Paris. My mother was French. And throughout my youth, the new wave, nouvelle vague of French cinema with François Truffaut and Godard and Chabrol were in the forefront of cinematography, in the forefront of storytelling. And what they wanted to do is to make the cameras smaller. They wanted to not build sets. They wanted to be on real places. And they wanted to create the human story and have human stories. And conversely, in England, the same thing was happening in the 50s and 60s, where suddenly things changed because of the artists that were in this country. You had people like Tony Garnett, the producer, John Osborne, the writer, Tony Richardson, Lindsay Anderson, Ken Loach, looked at the world from a different perspective, looked at the world from the working class perspective, looked at the world with stories which were intimate and small. And out of that came a sort of documentary feel to the way we look at films. And it's a little bit the reputation that this country has. And some of our best cinematographers, like Chris Menzies, like Roger Deakins, like Barry Ackroyd, came out of this documentary world, created a style, and now, as you will find out later, developed it into his very specific, very unique style of filming that is enhanced by America. The directors asked for him because of his unique style. And then we have, so it's a question of what happened at the time and the art and the people that were around. Guillermo Navaro from Mexico, 52 films, Oscar winning for Pan's Labyrinth, comes from a country that I noticed when Y Tu Mama Tambien came out and Amores Perros came out, and suddenly an influx of great artists, directors, cinematographers, writers came out of Mexico. What happened? And he tells me they needed to break the bubble. They needed to do something. They're next door. And these are his words, we are a third world nation. And we needed to create a style and create films in our way, which is different from anybody else's way. And to this day now, they have a movement of extraordinary films that win Oscars and win all the awards around. And that comes from something that Guillermo will talk about later. And we'll see everybody's selection of films during this panel. And then, of course, we've got Mátyás, Erdély, tiny country, Hungary, small. But the Hungarians have got such a specific style, such a different way of looking at the world. And you'll see his films, and you'll say, not in a million years would I've chosen to do it that way. But it is sensational. It's, again, human. It's about people. There are non-actors with actors, and you can't really tell the difference between the two. And he'll explain how, through his history, his country's filmic history, they created their style and their way of telling stories. It is, Vilmos Zsigmond was a well-known cinematographer, but, this year, two of the Hungarian cinematographers have won the best prizes for cinematography, or last year, and they're still making films in their way, but they take, and this is what I want to talk about, is the influences they take from Antonioni and other things. So you bring in other cultures, but you make your own and you develop from that. And what I'd like to start with is José Luis, who is Alcaine. Is that good? José Luis Alcaine, who is our elder statesman. He's a man who comes from Spain, worked enormously with Pedro Almodóvar, which is so specifically Spanish and has such a specific look that he can talk about and how they reached that look, which has continued throughout Pedro's films. And also, he's a theorist about the way that we film films and the discipline that we have to have on films. And I was saying to him, well, how come Spain has got the mantle of being the surrealist country? How come Buñuel and Dali and Picasso all came from Spain? And you don't seem to have it in other countries. And it's because, as José Luis tells me, they were mates and they were great artists. And they created a movement at that time which continues and has continued. And we could talk about the Spanish eye, the Spanish look, and how we blend it with all the other countries. And when we all work in America, so we all have to do, we all have a stance on the way we look and choose images. We've got a huge range of possibilities, and we have to make a decision. So that decision comes inertly from your heart and your mind and how you tell the stories. So what I'd like to do is start with José Luis's clips, and then we can talk about what he's chosen and his way of seeing the world.
¿Qué ha pasado? Pensé que vendríais para la comida.
Sí, lo sé, hemos confundido.
ellos esperando en Granada.
Bit of an emergency. Where's the lavatory?
Oh,
Where's
God.
Partridge?
Paco, I'll get Paco to show you. Acompaña al retrete, por favor.
Sí, sí. Ven para acá, ven para acá.
Muy bien.
¿Pero qué le ha pasado? Porque tiene una cara el probetico.
Oh, God, I don't know how to say it in Spanish. He's got piles, hemorrhoids. Ahí.
¡Almorrana!
Ahora, sí.
Aquí está, el retrete.
I beg your pardon?
El retrete.
What's that noise? Chickens.
Chickens.
Sí, sí, sí. Chicken. Am I out of reach?
Oh, one would hope so.
You sure? I don't want to become the Prometheus of piles.
Prometheus.
No, Paco, Paco.
You all right?
Yes. I'm worried about Lytton.
It's not something else.
Rafe wants me to... Yeah, someone's coming.
Venga. Bueno, ¿esta dónde van, eh?
Ve, déjame que le eche una manita.
Sí.
Esta es la de la señorita, que sí. ¿Lo ves? ¡Qué listo soy! Voilà. Todo esto al cuarto Gerardico. Y esta la vamos a llevar...
No. Esa y ese de Rafe al cuarto de cama grande. Y ese es Lytton's al cuarto de aquí.
Bueno, ¿qué? ¿Me va a presentar? ¿Eh?
Yeah, sure. Everyone, this is Maria, my housekeeper. Dora Carrington, Rafe Partridge y Lytton Strachey.
El primo la reina, ¿eh? Bueno, yo solo quiero decir, ¿eh? Que estamos muy honrados de tener a gente tan importante aquí. Y... pues eso, venga. Y ahora a sentarse, ¿eh? Y a comer, que tendrán mucha hambre, ¿eh?
Sit.
Venga, a sentarse. ¿Eh? Ángeles, vete a por más vino. A sentarse.
I would translate, but it's just too much fun watching you squirm up here.
You're cruel.
You know.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you, dear. Well, I think the brightest moment of our journey so far was that very pretty boy on the Trent of Seville. I always think that if one sees a pretty boy and then fantasises about him while masturbating, one can, in some senses, be said to have slept with him.
I'd say the significant phrase in that sentence was, in some senses.
Bueno, esto es una tortilla de papa, ¿eh? Esto no lo tienen ahí, ¿eh? ¿A que no?
More olive oil.
Yo se durmiera, lo acostaría en la cuna, los piececicos al sol, la cabecita en la luna. Este niño más bonito.
¿Todavía estás así?
Estoy haciendo la sopa.
Pues vaya una ayuda. ¿Qué? ¿Qué hace con esa hierba, eh?
Escucha, ¿para la sopa?
Llévate ahora mismo eso de aquí. ¡Quítalo de mi vista!
¿Por qué?
¡Ay! Porque no quiero brujería en esta casa. Ay, qué malica estoy, señor.
¿Qué pasa, Mariana?
Nada, que hayan traído aquí hierbajos de eso.
¿Pero qué hierbajo si esto es albahaca normal?
No me fío ni un pelo. Esta es una bruja como su madre.
Oh, for God's sake. Tranquila, María. Solo es albahaca. Es una planta india que traen árabes. Es muy bueno para condimento con ajo y aceite.
Bueno. Usted dirá a misa que ya sé que hemos leído. Pero si a luego le pasa algo, a mí no me diga nada. Ay, señor, si yo tuviera fuerza.
Ahí está la comida.
¿Qué es eso?
Gacha.
Pero es un piquito.
Sí, no tiene engañifa ni tiene nada, pero tú no te preocupes que eso lo arreglo yo ahora mismo.
Y...
Y es una porquería, ¿a que sí? ¿Pero qué quieres que yo le haga? A mí me toca todo, porque esa está todos los días en la cama.
Wow.
El otro. Si quieres comer, te lo pones tú, ¿eh? Ahí lo tienes.
planes funcionan. Oh, ya está celosa. Muy bien, muy bien. Felicidades. Es perfecto, ¿eh? I'm in the presence of a genius.
Bueno, hombre, no se lo tengas en cuenta. Está pasando por un mal momento. Pero malo, ¿eh? Mira, tú lo que tienes que hacer es irle ganando poco a poco. Ahora es cuando no hay que embalarse. Pasico a pasico. Un roce, una caricia. Un besico.
Pues sí que madruga hoy. No, Cantabria nos ha costado.
Si bien y Paco le das...
Pero no va a comer, ¿eh?
No, gracias.
Buenos días.
Ah, buenos días. Ten, Paco, para echar en hojija. Yo voy a caminar un poco.
Muy bien.
Adiós.
Otra cartica para la novia.
Ay, que ve, que no para de leer y escribir. Y a luego ala, par monte como las cabras. ¿Y eso por qué?
Pues porque no tiene nada que hacer.
Eso será.
Buenas tardes. Aquí le traigo la vino a mi madre.
Ay, gracias. Mire, que quería presentarle. Que es mi hija Ángeles.
No conocer tu una hija.
Sí. Y mire qué bonita es. Fíjese si es blanca, de piel digo. Que mire cómo se pone de colorada.
Ya, me voy, que se me hace tarde, ¿eh? Con Dios.
Adiós. Ay, es que me recuerda tanto a su padre.
¿Su padre?
Sí.
¿Murió?
No, ¿qué dice? Ay, no me diga que no sabe quién es su padre.
¿Quién es?
Pues don Fernando, a ver, ¿quién va a ser si no?
Don Fernando, don Fernando.
Claro. El amo, el cacique. Bueno, ahora está don Gravier, que le ganó con lo de los votos eso.
Culo negro.
Soy yo, soy Emilio.
¡Ya voy, Emilio!
¿Qué hay?
Perdona que te moleste a estas horas, pero es que me voy mañana para Barcelona y quería dejarte la llave del restaurante por si alguien pregunta y quiere verlo.
Ay, a mí no me importaría enseñarlo, pero yo no paro en casa, Emilio.
¿Y Paco? Él se pasa todo el día aquí.
Ay, Paco.
Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. It is 2 days since my last confession. Since then, I have discovered your treachery, Father. Or should I say, Señor Tablanca? Shame on you.
How dare you come here and accuse me?
You accepted my confidences and then used them against my husband. That is treachery.
We did not speak under the seal of the confessional.
Oh, you and your rules. To twist my words, to accuse him of perverting a child's mind.
What does your husband do but stir up unthinking minds to doubt the teachings of the church? His cave obscures the pure light of divine reason with muddy accident.
Oh, I read your articles, Monsignor Tablanca. I don't care to hear them repeated, however nice your phrasing.
My duty is to protect the faith of the church.
My duty is to my husband, who has not one deceitful bone.
You place your husband before God?
Not before God, before you.
It's time to make your confession, my child, before you sink deeper into error.
Confess to you, Monsignor, and read my sins in tomorrow's paper.
José Luis, let's talk about what you've chosen. I'd quite like to talk about Pedro Almodóvar because it's so specifically Spanish first, maybe, and we can talk about that. And then I know that the other clips that you've chosen have been because your theory of filmmaking and how you shoot things and the rules that you create for yourself when filming. So with Pedro, for instance, the look is very specific, very colorful, very bright, very sunny. The blood, I've never seen blood quite as red as that. It's stylistic and very humorous. And in tragedy, you have humor as well, which is very much, I think, Pedro's approach. But you were talking to me earlier about how you got to this look that Pedro has, which is not 100% your look. It's a look only that you have for Pedro. And you like to know that that you make films in different ways for different films, and you choose the look of the film for the director and for the content. So with Pedro, for instance, how did you get to this very bright, colorful look?
Well, the problem is only that he chooses all with the color. When we do a film together, for example, all the attrezzo equipment, all is put on the ground in a studio, can be 4 times this. And he has to choose all, himself has to choose all the pieces, even the smallest one, choosing by the color of this attrezzo for the movie. So it's really very, I say, it thinks always on the color of the movie. So I have to do a light which has to be plenty of light, so we see this color, because if not, it's very different. They can be very different. For example, in Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, there is a saloon which is made at studio, and he puts some curtains on it, on the windows, and they were red. And he tells me, I want this red, but what I see now, I do not want to you tell me after at the screen that it cannot be of this color. So you have to put the light. So I have to put the light for this red. So that means that I never employ direct light. I never employ Fresnel light in my movies, never. But in this case, I have to put Fresnel light over the curtains, so the light is up, so the red come up. But in a sequence, and I know that, and I told Pedro, in a sequence after, like 2 weeks after, because we were shooting at a studio, there was a storm, and the wind machines come, and the reader the curtains goes up and down, and so we see the light on the wall. The light I have put for them. That was terrible. I said, you have to cut this, and we cannot see that because it's very ugly. And he says, well, I will try, and he takes him out. But that is the way he sees it. In a certain moment, I have a window on a side like this here, a bed here, and here Antonio Banderas. But that was a small room, and the window was the unique light coming from. I put a soft light on him, so the shadow was not very hard, and he was sitting on a bed, a green bed. And I put the light, Antonio Banderas sits, and on the side of Antonio Banderas, there was a shadow, not very hard, very subtle, on his side. And it looks to me, Pedro looks to me, and he says, this green is not the same green of all the green of the bed. And he said, no. I say, no, because there is a shadow, and with the shadow, the green changes. He looks to me, he says, I does not want that. So I say, but that means that I have to put the light all over the same, so the green is the same in all places. And he says to me, yes, that is what I want. Wow. I was after 6 movies without doing anything with him, because I does not want, and he does not want, because we were on that movie from that moment, we were not really good, one, two. And after 6 movies, he called me and he said, well, I think that you have made the best photography movies I have made. So you want to come another time with me? I said, you have changed? Yes, I changed. So I begin another time with him.
So, I mean, just to be clear also, that the style that Pedro's obviously got and has developed came very much out of collaboration between you and him. And the first film you did with him, he didn't have this style, and it's through you showing him images and showing him the way that you thought the look of his films should be, created his style.
Yes, true, that's true. Because my first movie was a movie on the verge of a breakdown, more or less, no?
Yes, there's a verge of
a breakdown. Well, and that begins with this style of photography, and that begins also the Pedro Almodóvar style in a certain way, But always we don't. It's very strange. Normally we don't ever talk about the photography of the movie. We begin the movie, and as we are making it, he says, "You have found, as always, the style of the movie." For example, in the skin I live in.
Live in, yes.
I live in. Excuse me. Oh, I live in. I begin to do some the photo in a sense. I feel that was the sense of the movie, but he does not talk to me yet about the movie. And after 3 days of shooting, he says, "I will do the movie in the style you are doing it." By the way that we don't show on the way he does the movie and on the way I light it, we don't show what was happening next on the movie. We don't know. On that movie, on the skin, I light it, there is no possibility of knowing by the way it is shot and by the light what the movie is going to. That was very important, and that I found it on the first days of shooting, and he continued with that. Well,
it's the it's that whole thing of not being ahead of the story, and therefore the audience has to develop the understanding of the story through the images, and. We should move on from Almodóvar because we'll have a lot of chat from everybody, and for us to talk about your other choice at the beginning. Why do you choose those?
I choose Al Sur de España, Al Sur de Granada, because in this sequence we see the same set and with different light, but with the light of the sun, always the light of the sun. Because in Spain we have a lot of sun, and so I have studied all the movement of the sun in the interiors, and I want to show the different moments of the day where we are shooting. For example, I try to be very realistic with the dinner, which is the first sequence, because I think that at that moment, that was without electricity, this place in the south of Spain. So I want to show that the dinners at that moment were always at the end of the day. That is why there is a sunset at the moment of the dinner. They can be used also with candles, but these were very poor people. And for my point of view, I spoke with them. They don't put candles because it was too expensive. So I do it with a sunset, this light. And after, in this all this sequence, by the angle of the light and the color of the light, I try to give the impression of the moment of the day, midday, late sunset, or late at the beginning of the day. That's a way of what I see that the movies has to show to the public, that the time is passing in the screen. And the other one was the same principle. When we see the church on the last piece, is also some way of giving the light of that moment. The light is going down, but very low. Not low of intensity, but low of angle. That's the way. That's always my concern, that we see the passing of time at my movies.
Was that shot in the studio?
That is shot in the studio.
Yeah. So you had control of the.
Yes, we have control of all, because if not, it's not possible.
Yeah. Well, it is, but I could tell in a different way, because
yes.
With Ken Loach, for instance, when I worked with him, we would do similar kind of scenes, but we would plan the scenes to the right time of day. So
true.
So there's the important thing, I think, in all this is there's a truism in José Luis's way of photographing anything. So, you see a lot of TV shows now where there are so many candles. You think, oh my God, how come there's so many candles? But because you can use so many candles, and it does light the scene, but it's not realistic. And from all the things I've spoken to José Luis, he would never do that in a million years, because it's not true to the story, the period. Nobody could afford candles like that. And it doesn't make any sense. Or putting a whole bunch of smoke in the room and backlighting it and leaving it at that seems to be lazy. And I know that he would never do that. He would do it only when appropriate. And so it's a very specific style, and he's a great cinematographer. And he and Barry both won an award last year for Best European Cinematography jointly.
It was a little while ago.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. I thought it was last year.
We had to share it anyway.
They shared it anyway. And so it's a good way of actually going on now to Barry and speaking about his background. His background is based on documentaries. And let's see his clips first, and then he can tell me the things he's told me, which I think are fascinating. And he's a man that has a very, very specific style that you can recognize every time you see his films. And I want to know where that came from. So let's see the clips, please.
This one?
Jesse.
How do you spell that?
J-E...
All right, come on. I was going to show us on the board. Jesses is a new word to me. Hands up those who've heard of Jesses before. Nobody. Go on, write it up then. All right, now tell us what it is.
Well, the leather straps are attached to birds' feet. And say I've got bird on my hand, straps go down the end, then this swivel.
Swivel, right down on the board.
Then you've got your leash.
Leash on the board.
I fed it on my hand first. Then when it got to know me, I fed it on my glove. And after a while, I put it 2 inches away from its claws. And like that, started to jump for me eat. When it started to jump, I could move my hand away.
Hold your hand up so we can see.
Could move my hand away to 4 inches and 6 inches. And when it was doing that, I started doing it with leash.
Do they need water like, you know when you've got a budgie and you put water in the budgie's case, do they need water like that?
Well, it like as a bath. It is a bath right early on in morning like.
When do you feed it? How many times a day?
To start off with 3 or 4 times, to get it plump.
You make it all sound very exciting, Billy.
It is the most exciting thing when I flew free first time, sir.
Do you want to hear about that? All right, come on.
Well, I'd been using crayons for about a week, and it had been going 30, 40 yards. And it says when birds going 30, 40 yards, it says in book, that it's time that it can start to fly free. Well, I'd been wanting to fly free, but I daren't. I threatened it would fly off, something like that. And this had been going on for 4 or 5 days, and keep on to me, son, saying that fly it free next day. Anyway, I got right mad with me, son. I says, right, I'm flying it free tomorrow. Anyway, that Friday night it was, I didn't feed her up so that she'd be sharp set next morning. And I went to bed that night, Friday night, and I didn't get an hour's sleep at all. I frightened about bird, that she'd fly off or something like that. Anyway, when morning came, I kept on saying to me, son, well, if she flies off, and it can't be helped. So I took swivel off and let her up onto the post. There were no stopping her now, she could fly off. All what on her were her jesses. I thought she must fly off, she's supposed to fly off. But she didn't, she just stood there, all terrified. Well, anyway, she was stood there and I walked off into the field and she was looking around all over the place, and when I got in about 70 yards from her, in the middle of the field, I called her. Kes, come on, Kes, come on then. No, it happened. So I thought, well, I better walk back and pick her up. So while I was walking back, I saw her flying. She came like a bomb. About a yard off floor, like lightning, head still, and you couldn't hear wings. There wasn't a sound from wings, and straight onto the glove, wham! And she'll grab me for meat. Anyway, I was pleased with me, saying I didn't know what to do. So I thought, well, I better do it again just to prove that it won't look. So I took her back onto the post and walked back up into the middle of the field and called her again. And she came just as good as first time, straight onto the glove and grabbing for meat. Well, that was it, sir. I trained her, sir, and that's all I could do.
I think you've done enough, don't you? Well done, Billy. Big hand of applause.
Captain, relax. Nobody get hurt. No Al-Qaeda here. Just business. We want money. When we get paid, everything gonna be okay. The ship. Where from?
Ship. America. It's an American ship.
America? Yes! You? Yankee?
Me?
You?
Yeah. Yankee Irish, yeah.
ولكن هذا كتب Irish الله عنه. Irish. Okay, Irish. What else you carry?
What do you mean?
TV, car?
TV car? No. We just got the food.
Dollars?
We do. Kenny, what do we have in the safe? We got like what, $30,000 in the safe? Yeah, like we got like we have in the safe. We got $30,000. It's yours.
$30,000? What am I? Do I look like a beggar?
It's all right, it's all right.
Get back there.
Yeah, over here.
We got a problem. We pushed the ship too hard. We're off the grid. That means the computer's now offline.
Captain.
The ship's broken.
Captain, no one get hurt if you don't play no game.
The ship's broken. We had to go.
Nobody gets hurt. Easy. Hey! Look at me.
Sure.
Look at me.
Sure.
I'm the captain now. Here I come, boss. Flower.
Well, to me, all three of those clips are very human stories. They're very intimate stories. And I suppose Captain Phillips, which is a sort of style in which we now know Barry to do quite a bit in America, now he does other things as well, of course, is, again, a very human. It comes from the heart. And he was saying earlier that, you know, he finds faces and they're not quite in focus, but the focus comes in, and it's all good. It's all part of the atmosphere and the place that he feels the film and the storytelling should be put. So I'd like to ask, to start with Kes and the other two clips, why he chose them, and what are the importance to him for those things. Yeah.
So, why do you choose these things? Kes was a very important film to me because I was very much from that background of the kids. So when I first saw this in the 70s, early 70s, it made me feel empowered because I saw people made films about real people in real life. You probably couldn't even understand the dialect, but that was...
And you were the same age as that young little boy.
I was just about that same age, you know, a very similar kind of school, with similar kind of prospects, basically. And the story is one of injustice, and it is one of the greatest films, a motivation film. And, of course, it's shot by Chris Menges, so, you know, absolutely...
Top man.
Yeah, top man, and total inspiration to me, and, you know, I like to think of him as a mentor. I went on to work with Ken Loach, and I think we have to mention also directors and the importance of directors. All those films are important to me because they're with directors who taught me enormous amounts of things. You know, it gave me the opportunity to shoot a Ken Loach. I'd worked for him for 20 years, so I did 12 films, a dozen films. So, you know, and as you said, Jose, you're moving on, you're trying to progress from a style into something that represents your personality. Yeah. I think a cinematographer has to have a personality, has to have a signature that people can then recognize. So moving on from Kes, which had that big influence on me, and I think on many other people, I know actors and everybody in the film industry in Britain is probably influenced by that film in some way. And like I said, I worked with Ken Loach, thankfully, for many years. But in the process of moving, I had to find another voice because it was a single voice. And very much Ken Loach. Ken Loach and Chris Menges, because Chris taught Ken an awful lot. And that's why I put in this very small film that I did called Under the Skin. And that's basically due to the fact that it was with the director. She allowed me freedom to do things. And it's where I started to discover that focus was a very powerful tool. You know, the rhythm of focus between people and holding shots and shooting scenes that were improvised. That's a very improvised scene based on an idea. The camera, you know, a single camera, handheld, I always operate. And it was to be just to follow that action, whatever was going to happen in those 5 minutes of film, you know. So that's a kind of freedom to have to do that on a very low budget film, yet turn out something that's got very strong visuals in it as well. And I think that film achieved it, not so much in that scene, but the other scenes are very, very visceral as well. And I'll just finish with Captain Phillips. It's a kind of, I could have chosen Hurt Locker or Captain Phillips or United 93. Again, directors who give you this space to express yourself. And it often happens now on a film set that I get, so the director will say, just do that thing you do. Just, you know, like we tried this scene, we tried to make it work. You know, of course, I'd moved on through Hurt Locker by using multiple cameras. So it's not, although I'm operating a camera, there's 2 or 3 or 4 other cameras around you as well. So that you can see that in Captain Phillips, it's simultaneous action. It's happening, you know, very, very few takes, but with multiple cameras. So it gives the editor this massive ability to express the reality.
Yeah, action cuts, you know, so on the action you can cut it.
Exactly that.
From all the different angles.
Yeah, and in real, and never in a studio, almost never in a studio, at sea, in real places, and the ability to keep shooting, you know, and working with the directors who that's their vision. It coincides with your vision, and then you make the films, and, you know, but it has to have a signature.
Yeah.
And I think cinema, you know, let's praise the directors for all their ability to present all this stuff, but it's the cinematographer in the end who has to have the confidence to give the.
Well, especially in that sort of documentary style, because you're not quite sure what the actor's going to do, and he does it probably a bit differently every time, and you just have to go on instinct. And that's a completely different way of shooting than, you know, if you go scripted, a wide shot, mid shot, reverse, and all that business that are so often in films. It's a very different approach. I'll never forget talking to you before that film. We were in the Lord Stanley having a pint, and you said, "Oh, I've got this boat in the middle of the sea, and all the actors are purple black, and all the lights at night have to be turned off because the people from the boat turn off all the lights." I don't know, I'm going to do this.
Well, yeah, you also had to shoot day for night at sea. So dusk for night, day for night, night for night, because once it's gone dark, you still keep shooting, you never stop. So, yeah, these were challenges that I had. Beginning the film, I had no idea what we were going to do. I think we pulled it off in the end.
Yeah,
but
you did.
With you know, great help from a fantastic team of people, and you know, one thing is if there's new cinematographers here thinking, how do I do this? How do I move on? There's people out there who will help, and you know, there's knowledge that you can lean on. You know, that's partly what this show is all about, isn't it? There's all this knowledge out there in that room. It's all there for you to take, and you know, and people are happy to give it to you as well.
It's a collaboration of all of us and everybody. So now I'd like to move on to Guillermo Navaro, who shot Pan's Labyrinth, and comes from a country that, as I was saying earlier, is now in the forefront of the best cinema in the world. They've created a movement, but they've created a movement out of adversity. And that's all he told me, and I will want him to explain what he means by that after we've seen his clips. So if we could have a look at his clips, please.
sister.
Sire, please.
Dear.
Kar. Kar Rignition so. Huh? Kar.
Just set us free. All of us, Father.
Robritish Kada la Virodov. Katarova in a Kada Bliat.
A truce based on shame. The humans. The humans have forgotten the gods, destroyed the earth, and for what? Parking lots. Shopping malls. Greed has burned a hole in their heart that will never be filled. They will never have enough.
Is an Eder not nude on Neltlid in Doheny? Is the Eder not nude near for COVID in a deal?
Honor. Look at this place. Where is the honor in it? Father, you were once a proud warrior. When did you become their pet? I have returned from exile to wage war and reclaim our land, our birthright. And for that, I will call upon the help of all of my people, and they will answer. The good, the bad, and the worst.
He's flourishing. Na shitty la boot mer in Vedishin.
Perhaps I am. Perhaps they made me so.
Augusta Dalat. Amor Hasa Undoshini Oli. Base for Kenta Are. Shini Esov. Kengarami Oli Fonyevni.
We will not fade.
Dindu dedanak a mobak mohishpo. In eso in shade. As a boot to gravel.
It is. I'm sorry, Father.
Ni magvasho. Dano rago.
Akbas. And you, sister, are you at peace with your king's verdict?
I am, my brother.
Then very well. Death it is.
Notaras torasati.
Now look, all you got to do is lay in here and hold on to this motherfucker, all right? I'm gonna tell him I'm going in the trunk to show him the goods. When I open the trunk, you pop up and rack this motherfucker.
Man, fuck that shit. I ain't finna shoot nobody.
I ain't saying nothing about you shooting nobody. All you gotta do is hold on to it. They'll get the idea.
Man, you must be out of your fucking mind if you think I'm finna get in this dirty-ass trunk.
We ain't going nowhere but to Koreatown, man. You ain't gonna be in here no more than 10 minutes.
Man, I ain't riding in no goddamn trunk for no minute, man. Why I can't ride up front with you?
You can't ride up front with me. The surprise element is 90% of it.
I'm sorry, man, but I ain't getting no goddamn trunk.
I can't believe you do me like this.
Do you like what, man? I just ain't climbing in no goddamn dirty-ass trunk, man. I got a problem with small places, no.
Well, I got a problem with spending $10,000 on ungrateful peanut-head niggas to get them out of jail, but I did it. And how small was that jail cell, motherfucker?
Look, man, I know I owe you. You got to bring all
if
this
you owe me, then get your ass in this trunk.
Man, I want to help you, but I want to be locked in no goddamn trunk of no car.
You think I want to spend $10,000 on your ass, huh?
Man, I know
Do you think I
helped
wanted
me
to
out.
spend $10,000 on your ass?
Of course you
Yes or
didn't,
no?
man, but you nigga get in the
But
trunk.
that's the only way I could help you, right? So that's what I did. Now look, man. All I'm asking you to do is get in the trunk, hold this fucking shotgun, and point it at these Buddha heads when I open it.
You catch a
all right?
nigga off guard with this shit.
Look here. I tell you what. When we get through fucking with these Koreans, me and you go to Roscoe Chicken and Waffle on me. Think about it now. That Skull special, smothered in gravy and onions, side of red beans and rice, some greens. That's some good eating.
Man. Exactly how long I gotta be in this motherfucker? Hey, you said 10 minutes. Hey, motherfucker, you like to hit my goddamn head! You ponytail wearing motherfucker! Hell wrong with you?
Hello, my love. I heard a kiss from you. Red magic satin playing near to
a nigga a favor, gotta do it.
That Jackie Brown is simple storytelling, beautifully done, beautifully paced, and very funny. So, Guillermo, tell me a bit about what you wanted to tell me on the phone but didn't tell me.
Okay. So, I come from Mexico, and of course, like any other artists in the world, you're shaped by your circumstances. So where you grow, how you see the world, what you face. And in the time that I was growing up, there were very little choices for me to go about. So there were no film schools, there were no cinematheque, there was really no way to really learn on this. So I started doing still photography at a very early age, and I'm self-taught. I didn't have the opportunities that normally the first world provides and people take for granted. That shaped a vision, and that shaped how you go about your work and the needs of expression that you have. And you develop a sense of seeing the world from down up as opposed to up down. And you can be saying or talking about the same subject, and the interpretation is entirely different. And that gave me a very strong drive and a very strong determination, and because I'm a full product of adversity in that sense, and all the third world is like that. But in terms of the ability as an artist to express yourself, you have to fight and to go around lines that are not necessarily the ones that are expected to be, etc. So the vicinity with the United States is also something that a lot of people see as a great advantage, but also that shapes the circumstances. There's a Mexican saying that says that the Mexican condition is determined by how far we are from God and how close we are to the United States. And that's in these moments that is a little bit exacerbated, but it is like that. So, and then when you are growing in Mexico or in other third world countries, not that everybody is there nice and trying to help because we're all in the same. No, actually, it's very totalitarian regimes. You have everything against you, and it was just very hard. I actually had to leave the country to be able to do my work. I started doing still photography, and then I was able to do documentary work, and there was an incipient independent film movement at that time that I was part of. In the independent filmmaking in Mexico is not exactly what it's understood here, that is just outside the industry, but it's really a step into becoming part of the industry. It's really like a belligerent space where you're fighting the regime, basically, and you're expressing things and you're pointing out stories that are actually told from a different perspective, and that creates a lot of conflict. And the regime has an attitude of you're with me or you're against me. There's very little middle ground. And if you're with me, then you have a lot of perks and help and you belong. But if you're in the other side, then there's very heavy price to pay because you're very immobilized and everything. So basically, that became my situation, where the union that was controlled by the party that controlled everything of all the civil life in Mexico had the precise instructions of not allowing me, and so I was not allowed to work legally in Mexico. So I was able just to do things on the side, trying to learn, funny enough, I run into Billy Williams here after many, many years, but I was assigned to translate for him in a movie he did in Mexico. And it was occasions like that where I could see people working. And so that was, without him knowing, he was part of my school in that sense. Like others, you know? There's another Argentine cinematographer that did all his career in France called Ricardo Aronovich, that he was a very strong mentor for me. And so what happened was that there was all this was complicated, and there was people were like going through very difficult times trying to do their things, and an attorney friend of my family heard my story and discovered that he went and found an old legislation where the co-ops, the economic system of a co-op, was protected by some strange law in the past where no other political labor organization could deal with it or stop it. So there were minor co-ops or fishermen co-ops, and I was part of creating the film co-op. And so it was a legal loophole that we found, and I was able to do the very few movies that I was able to do in Mexico through a film co-op system, you know? And those movies started getting actually attention outside of the country. I was part of a movie that won an award in Cannes that was like unheard of. Just the fact that a Mexican movie would go to Cannes, etc. So that forced that more space was given because it was approved that we were actually doing work, or it was recognized outside, and then because it was outside probably meant something, etc., etc. So that reached levels, and they didn't like the fact that, so I was never recognized in Mexico for any of the work I did, and that had to do with, and it reached a point where the level of adversity reached where I ended with a gun in my temple, and that was the end for me. So I took my kids, my wife, and we moved to the United States after that event, because for me that was the limit. No, I had all kinds of, I cannot prove who it was, but it was like the situation was speaking to me. And I started my career in the US, where the very beginning, where I needed to get an agent, there was the idea that I go with an agency that were part of the Foreign Language Committee of the Academy, because they had a couple of movies that did the rounds of being selected. So I was able to get an appointment. And I got there, and they tell me, well, Guillermo, the work is great, but you cannot go to a studio and say that the position of the director of photography is going to be someone's coming from Mexico. We'll never fly. And I said, really? And then he said, yeah, you know, we already have a gardener in the office. So the position for the Mexican was taken. I said, so the position for the Mexican is taken, because I also wash cars, no, in case there's that opening. So I left. So that was how I left Mexico. That was California that received me. And from there on, I started.
So, I mean, people like Alfonso Cuarón and Alexandro Ini...
They didn't have those issues.
They didn't have that situation?
No.
So it's personally... And
I was before that, and directors didn't have the scrutiny of the union like that.
So they were still in Mexico, doing films in Mexico, were they?
No, but I mean, the movies that I did with El Toro in Mexico was done under a co-op, for instance.
Right, so it's a co-op that...
Yeah, so that was the space that allowed us to start doing things.
Right.
And then I restarted, I rebooted my life after that. But I landed in Hollywood with a very particular drive and a very particular vision, and then that's what gave me like an edge to go forward. So, in the strong point of view, so that is what allowed me to get in touch with filmmakers that in that moment were truly emerging filmmakers. So I did Desperado with Robert Rodriguez, and then I did From Dusk Till Dawn. That's how I met Quentin. Then I did this with him, and then by the time Del Toro came to do movies in America, then kicked on. But I was able to fall in and prove that not only was capable to do it, but I had a vision to contribute and in a world to bring. Then there's all this thing that country of this formation of documentary, etc., that is what I actually was able to do in the beginning. I focused very much on finding stories where the reality had to be created as opposed to being registered. And so that was also like the way to deal with the issues there. I mean, that's how the Latin American literature goes about, the creation of the realism, the magic realism, to actually talk about a reality, but it has to be channeled through other narrative sources and beliefs, etc., to hit the point. Pan's Labyrinth is a very clearest example of that. You know, it's a movie against fascism. Pan's Labyrinth. It's a story that takes place in the beginning of fascism in Spain, and the choice of how to tell the story was completely through magic realism.
And is that a Mexican style? Would you say, or is it just you guys?
I think that's an adversity style. Yeah. I mean, I don't think that has the signature of like tequila has of being 100% Mexican. I mean, that comes from that comes from anywhere that you face that you really have to find your space. And then that took me in a way to develop and really be very interested in the value of the film language, how the film language was allowing us to really tell stories that were grand and they were not just a documentary hitting in the head of this is a reality, because we live with that reality, very exacerbated reality. And then the value for me of exercising the film language, and that's why I picked those clips where the images are telling you pretty much everything. They're not scenes that are driven by dialogue where it's a writer telling you with words what you're telling, but it's a visual language, and therefore a lot of the projects that I was really after and looking for were stories where I could create the reality, that I could contribute to create a world. And it was even in parallel realities of magic realism, or in the past or in the future, but not going to the today's supermarket and shoot a scene there, because I was not interested just in capturing that reality with a raw eye. You know, it had to be mixed with the language. So that's pretty much the story, the background.
But so you also now are starting to direct. I don't know if you're going to do that on a regular basis, but you have directed something. So do you take on board as a director all these feelings and this way of shooting, this way of looking at the world, this way of telling stories?
Yeah, I mean, the projects that I've directed are not big budget projects, so they're very schedule driven, and but I do. Well, first of all, things that I'm interested in. I just did a movie with Catherine Zeta-Jones called Cocaine Mother, which is a story of the drug world in the U.S. And of course the relationship between the providers, the third world, and the consumers, the first world, etc. No? So that is a movie that just came out. And
are you touching on reality there, or are you fantasizing
reality,
it?
But I was narrating it as a character movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That would be specifically because of who you are and what you've had in the past.
For instance, the original script that I had was very procedural, was the cops and the good guys and the bad guys. No, that's pretty much how all this world in drugs is treated, as we're the bad guys that produce it and transport it, and the good guys are just sniffing it. And then the cops, were the good guys, are after the bad guys. And all these movies are about there, and you know, and I actually directed 2 episodes of this series, Narcos, and I left it because I thought that we were going to have a bigger platform and have a Latin perspective of it. And then it became really a DEA story of how they really do it. So it was an opportunity for me to to tell the story as a character. This is the story of a woman that became one of the strongest traffickers, and she survived all of them. She died until in her 60s. Very smart, etc. So I focused very much. I changed the script and focused very much on her character. And I did. The movie opens with a scene that I shot in Colombia of a 10-year-old girl, and I treated the character as what we know today of the psychology of the child soldier, where children that grow up around so much violence and abuse, their brains don't develop a sense of empathy, and that's why they're capable of committing the incredible atrocities and go about it. And then they grow up and they become this. So her case is that as well. So the movie starts with a scene where she's 10 years old and she's going to a house of a guy because the mother prostitutes her. So she goes, she comes back, he didn't pay him, and then he goes back, kills the guy, and leaves. So that's how she starts. So that is like an extreme expression of adversity, and she goes about it. She becomes the toughest, the biggest, and her life it's incredible. So that's the story we told, but we told it from that perspective, not from. Of course, the DA is involved and the cops are involved, but there's not their perspective. It's not them.
And I think that's very personal, and that's very much where you come from, and that's how you tell the story, which is specifically an angle. And all films and all stories can be told in many different ways, and you've chosen that way. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Hellboy there, the scene that you got there, which is extraordinary. I just wonder, how long did you have to shoot that? Because it seems incredibly complex.
That scene actually was the last scene of the schedule. And we shot that movie in 130 days, so we were zombies by then. We were dying. And we shot it in sort of a museum, so it was even harder because it was very difficult to rig anything. It was not a stage. It was very complicated. So we had again, rescuing the film language, where every shot ties into to how the scene is narrated and told. There's another very important thing that I missed before when talking about the film language is that we tried not to do the conventional coverage. Every shot is designed and becomes a shot in itself, and then that ties in with a next shot but it's not a conventional coverage procedure. It's finding really how the camera becomes part of the storyteller, and the camera is moving, finding, searching, etc. No? So that is a very important thing for me, where the camera is actually a very active part of the narration.
So I'll have to interrupt you now and go to Mátyás Erdély from Hungary, who's got.
That's where I shot Hellboy 2.
Oh yeah, that's where you shot Hellboy 2. So let's have a look at an incredible style of filmmaking, and let's talk about it as soon as we've seen it.
Aki magát ismerem.
De én magát nem ismerem.
Menjen innen! Menjen innen!
Mennyi lesz? 100 forint. Köszi.
gegangen. Stellt sich oben eine Geige. Nehmt auch die Sachen. Stellt sich in der Reihe. Nehmt auch alle Sachen. In der Reihe, in der Reihe. Los, in die Reihe. Nehmt auch die Sachen. Nehmt auch die Sachen. Nehmt auch die Sachen. Nehmt auch die Sachen. In der Reihe. In der Reihe, gleich. Stellt sich schön in der Reihe. Gleich. Seid gegangen.
That is 3 generations of cinematographers from Hungary, and for me, this last one that you did is sensational because it's so specifically moving, and you see so much often that's out of focus, but you're following the action as he's following the action, and it's horrific, and you've really got the humanity there so cleverly. And all handheld, all by you, and it comes from Hungary. It comes from, as you've shown us, this style of filmmaking, which is very particular. Do you want? Let's talk about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I think. Thank you so much for showing the third clip, because I think that these 3 are very much connected. These were done by 3 different filmmakers, with 3 different cinematographers, and they are 3 different generations. The first one was Miklós Jancsó, who is one of the most influential Hungarian filmmaker. One of his assistants was Béla Tar, who became Béla Tar, who is also, who became a massively influential Hungarian filmmaker. But he was actually an assistant for Miklós Jancsó. And the third film, which I have shot, was directed by László Nemes, who was an assistant for Béla Tar. So it's almost like a family in a way. It's grandfather, father, and son. I hope they don't mind me saying that, but it's extreme how these people are connected. And when we first talked about the topic of this discussion, I realized that if I pick these 3 clips, it will give you a very good understanding of, the question was, how who I am as a filmmaker, what's my background, and where I'm coming from. And I think just looking at these 3 clips sums it up in a very, very crystal clear way. That's us, I guess. I mean, of course there are other filmmakers, and of course there are other other amazing and beautiful ways of making films in Hungary. But for me, this was the... And it's funny because this is not something that I was seeking, that, okay, I want to be part of this. When I was growing up, I started to watch movies in a very serious way, when I was like, this is important for me. Then I realized that I connect to these films. I connect to the way they are told, the way they deal with time, and the way they deal with space, and the way they deal with a human face.
And it's sort of, you were saying also that the neo-realists, the Italians, the Antonionis, had an influence on Hungarian looks.
For sure. I mean, I'm not an expert, but Jancsó was influenced by Antonioni, and he was influenced by Tarkovsky, obviously, as we all were, I hope. But then it became something on its own. I mean, it became something that's very Hungarian, very, it deals with the topics that are us, that are history, that are, confused and problematic world that we live in, and that somehow is affecting even me, after all these years, and being born in the era of communism, that's definitely something that's gonna dictate how you see the world. There's no question about it, and I actually consider myself extremely lucky that I was old enough to really understand. I was 13 when the change happened, but I did live in that era. I do remember the color of the paint and the smell of the gasoline of the old buses and all that. And I mean, if you ask me what influenced me, that definitely did. And these films, again, the way they deal with the world and the way they see the world around us. And I think, for me, I just realized that one of the most important words is imperfection, like how our world is imperfect and how us as human beings are totally flawed and imperfect. And I think when in my work, that is what I'm looking for. I feel that imperfection is real, and I'm drawn towards real because I feel that's what really affects me. If I realize that, oh, okay, that's like me because that's imperfect and I'm imperfect, obviously, I relate to that. If something is slick, if something is perfect, I consider that fake in a way. I don't know what to do with that. I don't recognize myself in it, so I don't know how to deal with it. But I think, and imperfection in these movies is very important. These long takes, they're never perfect. They're always, a little moment when one of the characters steps just, off screen, and you embrace those imperfections, and then they become.
We agree.
Exactly.
We agree.
Yeah.
I mean, Ken Loach, you were saying, adored Hungarian films.
Yes, I mean, it was the only films he would actually talk about would be the Hungarian films, and it is that sense of reality coming from an imperfection. I think just what is occurring to me now, talking about that we have very similar views, obviously, because we make, and that having similar views. I've heard your talks at the Vancouver Film School and things, Guillermo, and agree with all of those comments that we make an individual, and we represent our countries in some ways. There are many other ways to do things, but there's a commonality between us that we actually not necessarily striving for the norm, for the obvious or the perfect, as you put it. And unfortunately, I think sometimes what people get to see most now is a form of perfection that's being presented through TV screens and on your phone. And I think, but a real voice is something else beyond perfection. It's humanity that's which is imperfect. Yeah, I agree entirely with that.
All of them shot on film.
And shot on film. Yeah.
So let's get some questions before we run out completely of time. If anybody wants to ask our panelists anything, but they're Okay, over there, this young lady, just the young lady there.
Hiya, this is a question for Mátyás. What do you think it is about the Hungarian psyche or experience that has this guiding a character through only their sensory experience and this abstraction of the world around them?
I wish I could answer that. I don't know. I think we are realists. We do see the world with its flaws, and we are not sugarcoating things. And I think there's I don't know if that's a word. Embracement, is that a word? We are embracing the facts that life is tough, in a way, and I guess that's the way we see the world. But I can't talk in general. I guess I'm talking more about myself and my view, but my view of the world. But
so you're trying to say like an attempt to simulate the fragmentary way we experience the world, like not giving all the keys?
I'm not sure I'm able to answer these questions. Sorry. They are super sophisticated questions. I'm not that sophisticated, unfortunately.
Any other questions? Second row over there. The man with the microphone, just look when somebody puts their hands up. That's probably the person to give the mic to.
Hi there. Yeah, just a question for Guillermo. You asked him how long it took to shoot the scene from Hellboy 2 that we saw, but he never actually managed to answer how many days it actually took in the end.
The Hellboy 2, that scene, how long did it take to shoot? You never answered it, apparently.
Oof. Maybe 2 days with some pre-rigging and stuff like that, and pre-lighting, but I think maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was
pretty impressive.
Very, I mean, there was a lot. There's a lot of not only a complicated lighting set, but on top of it, golden things falling. Then suddenly they will fall in the king, and we have to put a hamster on top to prevent the. There was a big action scene as well. Yeah, it's probably 2 days. Yeah.
Any other questions?
So I'm
Right
asking
at
the
the
next question.
Okay, I can't
it was
see.
about improvisation. Barry mentioned improvisation, and Mátyás is talking about long takes, and I'm just interested to see how as cinematographers you use the presence of the camera in a shot, and how you might improvise on shot as a strategy, as a way of working.
Did you get that?
Was that for me? Yeah, okay. I can't see who's.
Yeah,
who's
I think
hands
people
up
have to
show.
stand up when they do that,
Okay.
especially otherwise you can't see.
Okay. Yeah. About the.
What was the question?
Yeah, about improvisation.
It's quite a tough. Again, another tough question. Yeah. I developed my style from documentary, and I think it's and believing that every frame is absolutely crucial and important. The level of concentration that I put into every shot, whether it's handheld or not, is intense. You can see it in all these films, really. You have to be. I believe every frame will end up in the film. Obviously, you shoot a million feet of film, but I believe that each one of them is important. Each frame is important, and I think that develops a concentration and intensity, and that you never want that shot to stop. For instance, on the Captain Phillips, Tom Hanks wasn't used to that kind of idea, and he left one of the first days we shot with him. He left the bridge and he turned the corner and he went around the corner, and then he stopped and he turned back, and I'd followed him through, through the windows, and forced myself into a more difficult position, but I could still see him walking away, and then he'd go, I got it now. You're not going to let us go. You're going to keep the intensity of the film up. And from that moment on, he was right on board, literally on board the ship, but on board, yeah. So, yeah. That didn't answer your question at all, did it? But it was...
It was interesting, anyway. So Billy Williams here wants to ask a question.
Well, no, I'd like to make an observation, because I think we've been treated today to a wonderfully rich tapestry of work, of great diversity and great talent and imagination. And each of these clips has fully engaged me in the characters. Just a few minutes, and I've been, moved and engaged fully as an audience member, not just looking at it as a cinematographer, but I've been engaged by the drama. Yeah. And also, because one's looking at how things were done and how they look, is the way the light's been used. Because the light and the composition of all these pieces is so striking, and there's plenty of contrast. There's light and shade and depth, and I've been absolutely involved with what we've seen, and I think for the many young people here today who are studying cinema, this has been a masterclass. This occasion has been of enormous benefit to us all, because we've been watching the best, and I think it's been a great occasion, and just like to thank you all, and thank you, John, for hosting it so eloquently.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Billy, and I think you're absolutely right. Unless there's another question, I think there's one more question there. I think we'll just do one more, I think. And then we're going to watch the rugby.
Rugby? To play rugby?
No, I watch rugby.
Hi, this is a question towards Jose. You mentioned earlier on about how you position the lighting on a blood to make it stand out more, or when you were to find like the styles for the film. How do you know when you found like the perfect style for your film or the perfect shot that you want to take?
How do you know when how you shoot a film becomes part of the film and you decide on a style in your film? How do you get to that point?
Well, really, I am a strange DP because I read the script only one time before shooting the movie. Only one time, because I do not want to have a preconceived concept of the light of the movie. I prefer to wait to see the sets and the actors working, and the director, and I begin to establish the light of the movie. I think always, that's my point of view, that my intuition is better than something prepared and think before. And that means that in a certain way, I change all the time of photography. You see my movies, and you don't see a lot of work I have done, because I have shot 150 movies. And I try to do all the movies different. I try always. So I try to forget what I have done and don't think over the past, always from the future.
The interesting thing is that when we were talking, is that François Truffaut, who's a film critic, wrote a book about Hitchcock. And in the book, and José Luis mentioned it the other day, in the book, Hitchcock says, I have shot the film before we've shot a frame. And for José Luis, that's impossible, because the whole point of shooting a film and being on set is you get inspired by situations that you hadn't thought of to make the film better. Hitchcock was a genius, so he managed to get away with it, and obviously he has a style of its own, but it's something that he could never do in a million years. So look, we have to say goodbye to each other, but thank you to Barry, José Luis, Guillermo, and Mátyás for a great panel. Thank you so much for coming.